Michael's pulse raced as he locked the gym door, the Chicago night buzzing outside. At 42, he'd built a life of iron discipline. Husband, gym owner, unshakable. But tonight, a fleeting glance at Ethan, a 22-year-old newcomer struggling with a barbell, cracked something inside him. Why did this stranger's quiet resolve stir a truth Michael had buried for years, threatening the life he'd so carefully controlled? The gym hummed with the clank of weights and the low murmur of after-work regulars. Michael, broad-shouldered and commanding, moved through the space with purpose, his presence a fixture as steady as the steel racks. He'd spent 15 years shaping this place into a haven for lifters, amateurs, pros, and everyone in between. His marriage to Laura, steady if not passionate, anchored his personal life. Together, they projected stability, the kind that earned nods of respect in their tight-knit community. But beneath the surface, Michael carried a secret he'd never dared voice, a truth he'd locked away since his youth. Ethan was different from the usual gym crowd. Slight but wiry, he attacked the weights with a focus that bordered on defiance, as if proving something to himself. That evening, Michael watched him strain under a barbell, his arms trembling. Instinct took over. Michael crossed the floor in 3 strides, grabbing the bar just as it wobbled dangerously. Need a spot? Michael's voice was gruff but kind, steadying the weight as Ethan exhaled in relief. Thanks, Ethan muttered, his voice soft but earnest. Didn't think it'd fight back that hard. Michael racked the bar, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Respect the weight. It'll teach you fast. What started as a quick intervention became something more. Over the next week, Michael found himself drawn to Ethan's quiet determination. The kid, he couldn't be more than 22, showed up every evening tackling lifts with a mix of grit and inexperience. Michael offered pointers. Adjust your grip, brace your core, breathe through the lift. Ethan listened, his eyes sharp with focus, absorbing every word. Their exchanges were brief but charged, a current Michael couldn't quite name. One night, after a grueling set, Ethan slumped onto a bench, wiping sweat from his brow. Michael lingered nearby, wiping down equipment, but stealing glances. Ethan caught his eye and grinned, a small, unguarded smile that hit Michael like a punch. "You're here a lot," Ethan said, not accusing, just curious. "This place your life?" Michael chuckled, leaning against a rack. "Pretty much. Keeps me sane." Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering a beat too long. "Must be nice, having something solid like that." The words hung between them, simple but heavy. Michael felt a tug in his chest, a mix of protectiveness and something deeper, something he didn't dare name. He cleared his throat. "You're not bad yourself, kid. Just need to keep at it." Ethan's smile widened, and Michael turned away, busying himself with a stack of plates. But the moment stuck with him, replaying as he drove home through Chicago's glittering streets. Laura was waiting, her usual warmth tempered by a question in her eyes. "Late again?" she asked, stirring a pot on the stove. "Busy night," Michael said, avoiding her gaze. The lie came too easily, and it left a bitter taste. He wasn't cheating, not yet. But the pull toward Ethan felt like a betrayal of its own. At home, the silence between him and Laura grew heavier, a reminder of the distance that had crept into their marriage over years of routine. The next evening, Ethan was back, pushing through a set of squats. Michael watched, noting the kid's progress, stronger form, more confidence. "You're getting it," Michael called out, stepping closer. Ethan racked the bar and turned. his breath uneven, but his eyes bright. "Only 'cause you're drilling me," Ethan said, half laughing. "You don't let up." "Someone's got to push you," Michael replied, his tone lighter than he felt. Their eyes locked, and for a moment the gym faded. The clanging weights, the hum of treadmills, all gone. It was just them, the air thick with unspoken possibility. Then a regular, a burly guy named Tom, clapped Michael on the shoulder, breaking the spell. "You training newbies now, Mike?" Tom's tone was teasing, but his glance at Ethan held a flicker of curiosity. Michael tensed, forcing a laugh. "Just keeping the kid from dropping a bar on himself," he said, stepping back. But Tom's look lingered in his mind, a warning that eyes were watching. Chicago wasn't a small town, but the gym was its own ecosystem, where whispers spread faster than reps. That night, Michael lay awake beside Laura, her steady breathing a contrast to the storm in his head. Ethan's presence was unraveling him, pulling at threads he'd spent decades tying down. He wasn't ready to face what it meant, not for himself, not for Laura, not for the life he'd built. But as he pictured Ethan's determined eyes, that quiet smile, he knew one thing: ignoring this wasn't an option anymore. The spark had caught, and it was already starting to burn. The gym's rhythm pulsed around Michael, but his focus was elsewhere. Ethan's presence had become a constant, each workout a quiet battle between restraint and something fiercer. 2 weeks had passed since their first exchange, and what began as coaching had shifted into something deeper. Their talks stretched beyond form and reps, touching dreams, fears, and the weight of unspoken truths. But with every step closer, the cracks in Michael's carefully built life widened. Ethan arrived each evening, his wiry frame moving with growing confidence. Michael guided him through lifts, their hands brushing as he adjusted Ethan's grip on a dumbbell. Each touch lingered a fraction too long, electric and dangerous. One night, as they rested between sets, Ethan opened up. "Back home I never fit in," he said, his voice low. "Small town, big expectations. Being out, it wasn't an option." Michael nodded, his throat tight. "Chicago's different. You can be yourself here." The words felt like a lie, coming from a man who'd spent years hiding his own truth. Ethan's openness, his quiet courage, stirred something in Michael, a mix of admiration and guilt. He wanted to say more, but the gym's watchful eyes held him back. Laura noticed the change. At home, her questions grew sharper. "You're distracted," she said one evening, her voice edged with worry as they sat at the kitchen table. "Is it the gym? Something else?" Michael deflected, blaming long hours, but her gaze lingered, searching. The distance between them, once a quiet rift, now felt like a chasm. He hated the lies, but the truth felt impossible. At the gym, rumors began to simmer. Tom, the regular, caught Michael's eye one evening, smirking as Ethan fumbled a lift. "You're spending a lot of time with the new guy," Tom said, his tone casual but pointed. Michael shrugged it off, but the comment landed like a warning. Others noticed too, a glance here, a whisper there. The gym, his sanctuary, was turning into a minefield. One night, Ethan stayed late, practicing deadlifts. Michael stood close, correcting his stance. Their shoulders brushed, and Ethan's eyes met his, unguarded and searching. "You ever feel like you're hiding something?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Michael froze, his heart pounding. Before he could answer, another lifter passed by, eyeing them. Michael stepped back, his voice gruff. "Focus on the lift." But the question lingered, gnawing at him. That night, driving home, Michael gripped the wheel, the city lights blurring. Ethan's words had cut too close, exposing the secret he'd buried since he was younger than Ethan was now. He wasn't just coaching a kid, he was unraveling. And the more he tried to pull away, the stronger the pull toward Ethan became. The air in Michael's Chicago home was thick with tension. Laura's voice cut through the silence that night, sharp and unsteady. "You're never here anymore, Michael. Not really." Her words followed a week of arguments, each one chipping away at the facade of their marriage. Michael mumbled about work, but Laura's eyes, brimming with doubt, followed him as he left for the gym. He knew he was running, from her, from himself, from the truth clawing its way to the surface. At the gym, Ethan was a constant presence, his determination now laced with a quiet confidence. Their sessions had grown intense, not just in lifts, but in the unspoken connection between them. Michael corrected Ethan's form, their hands brushing, each touch a spark that threatened to ignite. That evening, after a grueling set, Ethan slumped onto a bench, catching his breath. "You push me hard," he said, his tone light, but his gaze heavy. "Why do I feel like you're holding back?" Michael's chest tightened. He wanted to answer, to spill the truth he'd buried for decades. But the gym's hum, weights clanking, voices murmuring, kept him silent. Instead, he deflected. "Just want you to get it right." But Ethan's question lingered, a challenge he couldn't ignore. The breaking point came on a rainy night. Laura's latest argument echoed in Michael's head as he met Ethan at a quiet bar near the gym, a place where no one knew them. They sat in a corner, the dim light casting shadows. Ethan spoke of his past, rejection by his family, the freedom of Chicago, the weight of being himself. Michael listened, his guard crumbling. When Ethan's hand grazed his, Michael didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was raw and urgent, a release of years of denial. For a moment, the world was just them. But the moment shattered. Tom, the gym regular, stood frozen at the bar's entrance, his eyes wide with recognition. Michael pulled back, his heart racing, but the damage was done. Tom's stare burned into him as he left. By morning, the gym buzzed with whispers. "Saw Mike with that kid," someone muttered. The words spread like wildfire, each glance from a regular, a silent accusation. Laura confronted him that night, her voice trembling with hurt. "Who is he, Michael? What's going on?" The truth spilled out in fragments. Ethan, the kiss, the feelings he'd hidden for years. Laura's face crumpled, her pain a knife in his gut. "You lied to me," she whispered, leaving the room. Michael stood alone, the weight of his betrayal crushing him. Ethan, too, felt the sting. The next day at the gym, he approached Michael, his eyes shadowed. "You're married?" he asked, his voice low and raw. "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael tried to explain, but Ethan stepped back, hurt etched in his posture. "I thought you were different," he said, walking away. The gym, once a refuge, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in as Michael faced the wreckage of his choices. The gym, once Michael's sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. Whispers followed him, sharp, judging glances from regulars who'd heard about the bar incident. Tom's story had spread, twisted into something uglier with each retelling. Michael, at 42, stood at the center of his crumbling world, the weight of his choices heavier than any barbell. Laura's silence at home was deafening, her absence at dinner a stark reminder of the trust he'd shattered. Laura demanded answers the next evening. They sat across from each other, the kitchen table a cold divide. "Are you in love with him?" she asked, her voice steady but brittle. Michael's throat tightened. He'd spent years dodging this truth, but her pain forced it out. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice raw. "But I've been hiding who I am. Not just from you, from myself." Laura's eyes welled up, but she didn't look away. "I deserve to know," she said, leaving him with the echo of her words. The gym was no better. Regulars avoided him, their conversations halting when he passed. Tom, emboldened, made a snide remark during a session. "Didn't peg you for that type, Mike." Michael's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent, knowing a response would fuel the fire. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his distance, his absence a fresh wound. Michael saw him once, lifting alone, his focus intense but his eyes avoiding Michael's. The connection they'd built was fraying, and Michael felt the loss like a physical ache. His family added to the storm. A call from his mother was laced with disapproval. "This isn't how we raised you," she said, her voice cold. "Think about what people will say." Michael hung up, his chest tight. The rejection stung, but it also sparked something new. Anger, not at them, but at the years he'd spent conforming to their expectations. He was done hiding. Alone one night, Michael sat in the gym after hours, the silence amplifying his thoughts. He'd built this place, this life, on a foundation of lies. But Ethan's courage, his unapologetic authenticity, had shown him another way. Michael needed to face himself, no matter the cost. He reached out to Ethan, leaving a voicemail. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have been honest. I'm trying to be now." Ethan didn't respond, but the act of speaking his truth felt like a first step. The next day, Michael faced the gym's crowd. He overheard Tom's gossip again, this time louder, meant to provoke. Instead of shrinking, Michael walked over. "Got something to say, Tom?" His voice was calm but firm, his presence commanding. Tom faltered, mumbling an excuse before leaving. The moment wasn't a victory, but it was a reclaiming of space. Michael was done letting whispers define him. In the quiet that followed, he found a flyer for a local support group pinned to the gym's bulletin board. It was for people navigating their identities, a place to be heard. Michael hesitated, then pocketed it. The gym, Laura, his family, they'd all been part of a life he'd outgrown. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time, Michael felt ready to walk it as himself. Michael stood at the edge of the gym, the familiar clank of weights now a backdrop to a new chapter. Months had passed since the bar incident, since Laura's tearful exit and Ethan's distance. The whispers had faded, but the scars remained. At 42, Michael was rebuilding, not just his life, but his truth. The gym, once a cage of judgment, was slowly becoming a place of purpose again, as he learned to stand unapologetically as himself. Laura had moved forward. They met one crisp Chicago morning, her eyes softer but resolute. "I'm not angry anymore," she said, her voice steady. "But I needed honesty, Michael. I hope you find it now." He apologized, not for who he was, but for the years of deception. She nodded, a weight lifting between them. Their marriage was over, but the closure gave Michael space to breathe. Laura was finding her own path, and he respected her strength. The gym's atmosphere had shifted too. Tom and his gossipers lost their sway. Their rumors, once sharp, now fell flat against Michael's quiet resolve. Regulars who'd shunned him began to return, some offering hesitant nods, others asking for training tips as if nothing had changed. Michael didn't flaunt his truth, but he no longer hid it. He coached with the same intensity, his presence a silent rebuke to those who judged him. Ethan reappeared one evening, his frame stronger, his demeanor cautious but open. "Got your message," he said, lingering by the weight racks. "Took me a while to process." Michael nodded, keeping his distance. "I messed up, Ethan. I should have been up front." Ethan's gaze softened. "You're trying. That matters." They didn't rekindle what was lost, but a friendship formed, built on mutual respect. Ethan's courage, his refusal to hide who he was, pushed Michael to keep going. The support group became Michael's anchor. He attended weekly, sharing his story with others navigating their own truths. One night, he spoke about the fear of losing everything, family, friends, the gym, and how owning his identity had set him free. A young man in the group approached him after, voice trembling. "You make me think I can do this too." Michael's chest swelled. Helping others felt like redemption. His family remained distant, their silence a lingering wound. But Michael found new connections in the group, people who saw him for who he was, not who he'd pretended to be. He started mentoring at the gym again, this time with a focus on creating a space where everyone felt safe. A new regular, a shy teen, reminded him of Ethan, determined but unsure. Michael offered guidance, seeing his own journey reflected in their struggle. One evening, as the gym emptied, Michael stood alone, the city's hum filtering through the windows. He wasn't the man he'd been a year ago, weighed down by secrets. The cost had been high, his marriage, his family's approval, but the freedom was worth it. He thought of Ethan, of Laura, of the group, and felt a quiet strength. He was living his truth, and that was enough. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. More stories are coming that will move you, inspire you, and challenge the way you see your own journey. Every story matters, and each one brings us closer to who we are meant to become.